Well, friends, today is going to be on the impact of domestic violence on on the mental health of women, especially because it's a much neglected but very crucial aspect of addressing domestic violence. We address domestic violence, but I think the mental health aspect of it is often neglected, and that is largely because no one likes to talk about it because of the stigma that goes around mental health. And so I think what we in the years of working with women survivors, it's also because the mental health gets impacted because women do not have an outlet to speak, about, because it's the everydayness of life, and it looks so silly and simple, like it tells you, you haven't done this, why have you cooked so much, but that constant nagging and constant kind of thing is tells very badly. If you cook too much, why have you cooked too much? If you have cooked less, why you have cooked less? If you cook 2 dishes, why only 2? Why not? If you cook 10, why have you cooked? So it's a continuous kind of thing that really takes a toll on the women's mental health.
As much as I'll be focusing on the mental health of the survivors of domestic violence, but that dialogue is going to be incomplete if we do not look at the mental health of the perpetrators as well as the witnesses. Because a lot of times, imagine here is a woman who's suffering from a certain mental health condition, but for all you know, that gets worsened when she realizes that the child who has witnessed domestic violence is also suffering from certain mental health concerns. And the same goes even with the perpetrators. Now, this is just to contextualize where generally, we can consider domestic violence to be. Look at this. I mean, if you are looking at categorizing violence, there are 3 broad ways we could categorize, and the overlapping nature of it definitely cannot be denied. Look at the first one, self-directed violence. Yeah, then we have interpersonal violence, and then we have collective violence. Now, my doctoral work was on women who burnt themselves. So at the face of it, it would look like, what if a woman is burning herself? Where would it fall? Self-directed violence. It might look like that, but really is that the case? So for all you know, the origin could very well be interpersonal violence. No, and I would say it is. At least 99% of the cases, the origin of self-directed violence was interpersonal violence, and that's the domestic violence. But sometimes this interpersonal violence, is it not connected to the collective violence? Patriarchy in itself. Think about it. I mean, every time we've gone to the Victoria Hospital, yes, there are men who are survivors of burns, but there the majority of their reason is under the influence of alcohol. Accidentally, sometimes they've burned themselves, whereas the majority of the women who burned themselves were victims of domestic violence. So therefore, these are the 3 broad ways we could categorize violence. Yeah, each one is influencing the other, but technically speaking, domestic violence, we can consider it to be interpersonal violence, and that could lead to self-directed violence, like suicidal attempts, self-harm attempts. And this domestic violence in itself could be stemming from the larger collective perspective that sometimes life is taken for granted of certain gender, right? So this is one broad way to categorize. Is everyone okay with this? Now, quickly moving on to, now what I'm speaking is just the foundations. In a slide or 2, we'll go to the mental health, directly. Now, every time we are looking at any form of violence, we need to look at the mental health from these 3 perspectives. Like I've already mentioned, mental health of the survivor, mental health of the witnesses or bystanders, and the mental health of abusers. Not just in the context of domestic violence. It could also be child sexual abuse. It could also be bullying. It could be dating violence, or it could be sexual harassment at workplace. There is definitely a need to look at mental health from all these 3 perspectives: survivors, witnesses, and definitely the perpetrators. So today we'll be learning about, there are three broad categories of perpetrators of domestic violence, and you would see, depending on the mental health of the perpetrator, the crisis intervention strategies at times will vary, and it should vary. So we will look into all of those. Would that be okay? Yeah? So now, yeah, already changed. Now look at this. Like I'm saying, this is just the foundation right now. When we are looking at domestic violence or any form of violence, these are the 6 broad forms of violence. There's physical, technological, sexual, verbal, financial, emotional. And of course, in any given scenario, the overlaps are always there. No, where there is sexual violence, won't there be physical and emotional violence? Yeah. But let's also look at some of the neglected forms of these forms of violence. Now, whenever we are looking at physical abuse, what comes to our mind is, hitting, burning, strangulating. But can you think of some neglected forms of physical violence? Something that on the face of it, we don't consider it to be physical violence, but it is. Any such examples? Ma? Yeah, throwing something. Eating food, little bit of salt is more, and just, throwing it. Or the medical negligence. The number of times during COVID, women reached out and they would say, my husband and both of us fell sick. But when the question of there is no bed came, I let go of my space in the hospital, and my husband got himself admitted in the hospital, whereas I was left to the home care. And that was not even a debate. Who must get admitted despite maybe comorbid conditions and all that. So therefore, let's not forget the neglected forms of physical abuse, such as medical negligence. What else could it be? Yeah, not giving money for household expenditure is also financial abuse. But then imagine if it's only related to the medical expenses of this lady, then it overlaps with financial abuse as well as physical abuse. Restriction of movement, isn't it? Look, this is so common even in my the data that I collected. Women who burn themselves, many times it would be like the mobile anger, the mobile of this lady is thrown. So look what they're choosing to displace their anger on. And that's also physical abuse. The laptop, and only this lady's laptop is thrown and not theirs. Even in anger, their laptop is still safe. So therefore, even sometimes the neglected forms of physical abuse also something that let's keep in mind, because in connection to that, the mental health symptoms would vary later. See what I mean by that is, imagine here is someone who keeps telling, I'll throw your laptop, you keep talking to me like this. Or there is someone without telling they dropped it. See, imagine I'm working on my laptop, my husband picks up a fight with me. I don't know that his next movement is going to be throwing the laptop. If he just comes and throws it without giving me any, prior warning, likelihood of me suffering from PTSD is more, because it happened so suddenly. On the other hand, if he's someone, any time we are fighting or having an argument, if he's the one to be telling, look, I'll throw it, 100 times this has happened, but then the act hasn't happened. For all it may not be PTSD. Instead, I might develop anxiety symptoms, severe anxiety. Will that happen? I don't know what I'm afraid of, but then because of constant warnings. See, what I'm trying to say here is, depending on each example of violence that we are taking, the mental health repercussions could vary. Did you all understand? Just one example, immediately coming and throwing is likely to traumatize me. That will have its own set of symptoms. But with constant threats, 3 months is threatened that I'll throw. It may not lead to PTSD, it might lead to severe anxiety symptoms. So just the understanding of how each form could have All of this is probabilities only. Nothing is this is the cause and this is the effect. But then this probability itself is something that we may have to be aware of. Are you all okay with this? Yeah? Now let's look at technological abuse. I read this article on technological abuse. Now you tell me, there are three words we use to describe God, right? It starts with O. Oh my God. No, not oh my God. Omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Isn't it? How do we say the word, ma'am? Omniscient. Okay, I had my own pronunciation prior to this. Omniscient. Now these are the, Sarvantaryami, Sarvagna, Sarvashakta. Yeah? I read this article where this is a qualitative study. This researcher has spoken to abusers using technological abuse, the forms, and he's done a thematic analysis of the content that has come. Those perpetrators of domestic violence using technological abuse, they have given an impression that, look, with physical abuse and other forms of abuse, I cannot give an impression that I'm omnipresent. I'm omnipotent. For example, imagine here is a lady, the man say, the other day when you had given your cell phone to change the password, I downloaded an app. Because of that, wherever you go, I know. Are you seeing what impression it's giving to this lady? That wherever I go, he knows. Isn't he now becoming omnipresent like the God that we think? Or any WhatsApp message that you send one app, I know what you are doing. We don't know whether that app is there or not. We don't know. And just the threat is good enough to create an illusion that this person now is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. You're okay with this? Now look at that. Look at that. So the moment a CCTV is installed, isn't now the person becoming omniscient? Omnipotent? Yeah, I know. You're trapped here, and I know what you would do. If you're calling, I can see it, I can hear it. It's audio enabled also. So more and more number of perpetrators using technological abuse, the forms, are giving an illusion, creating an illusion that, look, I'm this powerful. So on one hand, it could be used as an evidence, but then there are also other negative, surveillance, intrusion of privacy. Absolutely, absolutely. Correct. Yes, yes, passwords are known. The husband knows all the passwords, whereas it's not the case with the other party. So the overlapping nature, and I want you to think, with every example, what could be the mental health consequence of that. There is research evidence today talking about, let's say, managing anxiety disorders. Earlier, maybe to just suggest that, okay, in a day, if 6 hours, if you are in a safe space, the body would regulate itself, right? Imagine 6 hours, maybe you're in the workplace, and of course going back to home has its own set of consequences, but 6 hours in a workplace, for all the body had an opportunity to regulate. But now with somebody telling, go to your workplace, everything that you speak, somehow I know, or whatever you do, I learn, there is no time and space to recuperate from the repercussions of domestic violence. So therefore, mental health point of view, where technology is involved, recovery is becoming faster, recovery is becoming slower. Earlier, just that gap, 2 hours, can you just be at your workplace, therefore your body can recuperate, whereas now it's becoming difficult. So we need to look at other alternative plans when it comes to managing emotions. Now quickly I'm moving on to sexual abuse. Usually we categorize it into contact forms of sexual abuse and non-contact forms of sexual abuse. I think whenever we are talking about domestic violence, both these forms need to be kept in mind. Now, contact form of sexual abuse is anything that involves touch, molestation to rape, non-consensual. Whereas non-contact forms of sexual abuse, what could it be? Yeah, voyeurism. Then, ma'am, you said pornography. We had a case where the wife didn't know he was recording. He was recording their sexual, the act, and then showcasing that to his colleagues at the workplace. Can you imagine the shock? It's a legal case, yes, but then the psychology for her, it's like, I don't know who has seen me. And this was the person who, and he's told her that yes, I have recorded, and what's there? And he's telling in comparison to what I know other men are doing, which is, wife swapping and all those, he's telling what I've done is nothing. And for her, it's like, how can he even trivialize the act of violence that he has, carried out? So, therefore, when we're talking about sexual abuse, it's not just important to just talk about marital rape. Of course, that's violence at its height, but also non contact forms of abuse. Forcing a partner to watch porn in itself is abuse. If on a scale of 0 to 10, we call it SUD, SUDS. Anyone who knows what is SUDS? SUD, especially psychology students, I would want you to know SUD is subjective unit of distress. It's like, imagine I am in pain, she is in pain. Objectively, we will never know what is the intensity of pain each one of us are going through. No? Isn't it relative? It is. So now SUD is subjective unit of distress. And I remember this lady, I'm asking her, I know how, deeply traumatized you are. Just keeping in mind every other behavior of, this person, this act that he's now coming and telling you is recorded the sexual, the act and circulated it, the degree of shock 0 to 10, and she's telling, ma'am, it's out of the scale, it will be 100. So subjective unit of distress is so high. I think it was one of the contacts that Satya had given for me to go interview. She's a burn survivor. She's telling me, and I'm asking her a SUD question, SUD question, the pain it caused. She's telling, in comparison to the way my husband would talk, that pain, as opposed to the pain of me burning myself, she's giving, the pain that her body is going through after burning as one, as opposed to the words of her husband, she's giving 8. So you see that SUD? We are talking about burn survivors, and she's telling, ma'am, me burning myself with knowing that I may die was the calmest thing. If given a chance, I would give it 0. See, that's the brilliance of SUD. That's the only way I and you can understand what the depth of the emotions are. No? Otherwise, I would have gone there thinking what? The feelings of burns, that's the most severe pain. And she's giving it 0, 1 between. And then she's telling, ma'am, the way my husband talks to me, he does not hit me, she says. Hitting, she's giving it lesser score, 2, 3. Whereas the way he talks to me gives me the pain of 8 and 9. I know I slightly deviated from this because sometimes I have seen, sometimes even counselors may think that, verbal abuse is less intense, sexual abuse is more, physical abuse is more. Now, no, that would be very, very, wrong on our side to just think this form of abuse is less severe. So, will you all use SUD? And SUD is a great way to make sense of our own pain also sometimes. Yeah. Now, quickly, let's move on to verbal abuse. Now, verbal abuse, stereotypically, what are the examples? Swearing, labeling, scolding, ma'am? Name calling. But what are some of the neglected forms of verbal abuse? Look at that. Embarrassing the person in front of others. Then, not talking. This is a neglected form of verbal abuse. Yeah. What did I do? Sometimes even in counseling, they'll say, what did I do? Did I scold you? Did I hurt you like others? But you didn't talk at all. Or you took away the words of the other person. You didn't give opportunity to talk. Even that's verbal abuse, isn't it? Not allowing this lady to talk is also verbal abuse. The other forms of verbal abuse, I don't know. Sometimes I've had audience pick up fights with me telling everything you're making it as verbal abuse. But the one other example of verbal abuse is chronic forgetting. What is this chronic forgetting? Imagine I tell something to my husband, 3 hours, my pain. Listen. Tomorrow I'm like, yesterday I told you that, right? What did you tell? Unless there is a hit on the head and amnesia is happening, that's understandable. But this is chronic forgetting only my words, a deliberate forgetting of only my words. Everything that's happening in the office 5 years ago, that conversation is remembered. Whereas what I said yesterday, despite you nodding your head and saying I'm understanding, if you constantly forget, sometimes it needs to be looked from the perspective of verbal abuse, because you wasted my words. At least had you said, what, I have headache and today is not the day to talk. Understandable. Once in a while, understandable. The nature of abuse is its persistent quality. Some of you are laughing. That means you see what's happening. Sometimes chronic forgetting. How is it that the other person's words are never forgotten? Only the wives think about it. Chronic forgetting without any biological or psychological reason. Amnesia, understandable. Any other mental health condition, understandable. But without anything you forget, it's equivalent to saying, I don't care. I don't care. That's also emotional abuse. Are you all okay with this? And there's also, what are the two types of lying? Lying by commission. And what's the omission? You didn't ask me, I didn't tell you. Lying by omission is also verbal abuse. You did not tell a lie, but neither did you tell the truth. I was part of this project where some Saksham project or something like that. We were given the task of supervising clinical psychologists and counseling psychologists working with HIV, the survivors. I think ma'am might be. And there I remember in one of the hospitals here, the husband was tested, HIV positive, and he had not talked about this to the wife. And then in the counseling, he's telling, I've not lied to you. And she's like, but you've not told me that you are tested HIV. It's like, yeah, I simply didn't tell you the truth. Can you believe that argument? What lies have I told you? He's telling, what lies have I told you? But she's like, but you didn't tell me you're HIV. And he's like, no, I simply didn't tell you the truth. So sometimes, so that's verbal abuse. Yeah. Then we have financial abuse, emotional abuse. Now, the perspective that I want all of us to share is, for each form, there might be a resultant mental health consequence, which we will now focus on. Would that be okay, everyone? Yeah, I'm just moving on quickly. Okay. This is an important image. Those of you interested in research, this is coming from this person by name Dutton. Dutton. I usually use this for where there is denial that I am not a survivor of domestic violence. There is mental health consequences, but there is heights of denial that no, we simply argue. It's a fight. I'm not a survivor of domestic violence. And years might have gone. The person is a survivor, but then there is no acknowledgement. And because there is no acknowledgement, can there be an intervention? Absolutely not. Are you all okay with this? Now, I usually use this as a way to psychoeducate. See, sometimes, in colleges, we are now conducting a lot of sessions on dating violence. Sometimes, after learning about this cycle, many breakups have happened for the right reasons, because somebody might be stuck in the cycle and they are thinking, that line, the number of times, what's that line? All is fair in love and war, ma'am. We fight, but then we make up. And so such denial. Conflict and abuse are different, right? And this is a cycle we can use to explain that. Yeah? Look at this. There are four distinct phases. Yeah? The first one is there is tension building. Usually in literature, the phrase that I've seen is it's almost like walking on eggshells. It's so brittle. You don't know when the next act of. Ma? You're about to say something? Yes, we don't know. It's that fragile. I'm all smiles, but then I don't know what might trigger the person. So the tension builds, And then there's going to be an incident, you know, an extreme act of violence. It could be physical in nature, it could be sexual in nature, it could also be verbal. You remember the case that I said where she said, my husband's words cause me more pain than the fact that I'm burnt. That didn't cause me more pain. So an incident will happen. Now, the third step is very crucial to determine whether the person that we are dealing with is an abuser or not. Look at this. Tell me, if it's a genuine conflict between the couple, what's likely to happen? Both partners will take time to reconciliate. No, both of them are not talking for 2 days. Hey, how dare you told me that? How dare you replied like that? When it's a genuine conflict, reconciliation takes time. Whereas when it's an abuser who's self-aware, many abusers are self-aware, they know their behavior. What's likely to happen is an abuser is too quick to make attempts of reconciliation. Examples, look at this. An act of violence occurred, they might immediately apologize and forget tomorrow they have apologized. Too quick to apologize. Even with cases of child sexual abuse, we've seen abusers are too quick to sorry, I didn't mean to touch you, I didn't mean to do this to you. But you tell me, what's an apology? An apology is equal to sorry for, yes, the past action, plus tell me what comes, a promise that I won't do it, isn't it? Now that's not the logic of an abuser's apology. An apology is equal to sorry for the past action plus promise that it won't happen in the future. Whereas an abuser, more often than not, does not have this formula for apology. An apology is just a sorry. And tomorrow, forget. I remember this, I think this must have been like 2 years ago or something. She would say, this man had I'm so sorry, maybe it's a trigger warning. Are you all okay when I'm giving this example? He would burn her, the genital area with cigarette. He would burn. Seconds later, after the intercourse, he would want it all over again. And she's like, it's burning. You've burnt me yourself. Whereas it would be like, sorry, but I just did that for my pleasure. It was not with the intent to hurt you. You see? Isn't this abuser too quick to apologize? Seconds later. And when we met that lady, she still had the confusion that no, when he burns me, it's not with the intention to hurt me. Instead, it's just his way of seeking pleasure. You see? So for her, it's not abuse. And can we address the mental health of the survivor? Because there is no acknowledgement that it is abuse. We need to be very careful. Sometimes, when Kajol was talking about how at MUKTHA Foundation we focus on a lot of preventive work, what it means is going to the community and speaking about what seems technical in a manner that they understand, so that we, help them understand that, look, it's not conflict or it's just not some unusual behavior. Instead, you're stuck in the cycle of abuse. Look at the other acts. Abuser apologizes or will give excuses. No, today I hit you because In the office, there was some tension. During COVID times, the number of women who would justify violence by saying, there is financial problem at home, no? And alcohol is not available, no? Therefore, he is hitting me. And the more you justify, won't the abuser gain more and more reasons to abuse and then ask sorry? We really need to psychoeducate. Blames the victim. Can you give me an example how the abuser would make it seem like the victim is the reason for abuse? Any example? Yeah. You spoke like this. I had promised myself I'll not hit you today, but then look at that expression. Ma'am? She triggered. And imagine if in the childhood this lady was brought up in an environment where the father told the same thing. I hit you because look at your expression, look at the way you talk. Now, for all the survivor thinks, I am the reason. Technically, this phenomena is called personalization. I am the reason for violence. I am the reason for violence. Are you all okay with this? The next one is denies abuse occurred. I did not hit you. You've hit. And then the person is saying, no, I never did this. Now, is there an evidence? No. I didn't do this only. Denying outright. Or says, it wasn't as bad as the victim claims. You fell, I know, but then I didn't push you. I touched you and then you just went. Look, because the floor is very smooth. So all of these and more at times may make the abuser and the survivor reconciliate superficially. And the hallmark feature of an abuser is, after reconciliation, they may give a superficial sense of calmness. Everything is hunky-dory. Incident is forgotten, within quotes, at least in the mind of the abuser. No abuse is taking place. It could last for 1 day, 1 week, or the honeymoon phase. That's the technical term. It might just be for 1 day. Now, what's happening to the victim? If this person could be like this, then maybe I do something that the tension builds. Are you all okay? Because I've seen many survivors with the cognitive distortion of, what did I use the word? That phenomena which started with P, personalization, mostly would justify abuse, or they blame themselves. I had this one person, she's telling, my star is such that people around me will become Chandi. Chandi is aggressive and, violent. It seems my husband was very calm before marriage. Look what I have made him. It seems she asked the mother-in-law, Hengidro, my son was not the problem. You came, you created the problem, and unfortunately now you are the victim of it. And the guy, after becoming the Chandi, is only violent towards the wife, nobody else. This is traumatic bonding. Traumatic bonding is falling in love with those who are traumatizing us. Also called Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome. The one who hurts you the most is the one who you love the most. And you see what's happening? Because there is this calm face. They're thinking, hey, if this can happen, what if this can be forever? But is that forever? No, it's a cycle. Imagine if somebody is a psychopath, and psychopathy is a personality disorder. Psychopathy is a personality disorder. See, at least when I got trained, there were like 10 sets of personality disorder. Let's say the most severe psychotic ailments can get cured. But when it comes to personality disorders, for every one step forward in therapy, we will go 10 steps backward. Personality disorders are the toughest to deal with in therapy. And many abusers have personality disorders of antisocial personality disorder. And whatever is your definition of love, and we believe if love will cure, maybe not in this lifetime. let's not deny because we don't know. Yeah, but then sometimes it cannot happen in this lifetime. See, sometimes for physical safety and psychological sanity, sometimes separation is needed, desirable, because people with personality disorders don't change. See, I hope it's not technical, right? I'll give two words. Is there I'll just write there. See, there are two words. Everyone listen to this. Symptoms can be, look at this, ego dystonic or ego synctonic. Say, for example, let's forget domestic violence context. Uh, how many of you have watched Big Bang Theory here? Okay, seems popular. You tell me, who is that guy? Oh my God, Sheldon. Sheldon has what is known as OCPD. Yeah, Shelley has OCPD. What is OCPD? Obsessive compulsive personality disorder. OCPD. And there is also OCD. Disorder wise, there is OCD, there is OCPD. This is for me to explain what's the difficulty with personality disorder. There is OCD and there is OCPD. What's the difference? Sometimes same set of symptoms. Tell me, what is the symptom OCPD? Sh- Sheldon, what are his symptoms? It's, he cannot change. Now, the idea is, imagine somebody with OCD, they want to wash their hands 100 times, and yet they feel, the hands are dirty, or let's say there is dust here and they're really bothered by it. Now, the difference is, for those of you there, is it okay? Yeah. See, OCD, right? The symptoms are ego dystonic, meaning the person knows that there is this means there is dysfunction. So the person with OCD, imagine, or a person with schizophrenia, let's say, they know they have a certain problem. Ego, any time in mental health, the word dis comes, there is a problem there. And the awareness is there. So OCD is ego dystonic. A person might come and tell that, what, I am washing my hand 100 times and yet I feel so disturbed. They may say that. Whereas a person with OCPD, the symptoms are ego synctonic. What's the meaning of the word sync? It's so much part of who we are. I might be like, you don't wash your hand 10 times before eating. What are you? You see, that awareness is not there that my behaviors are problematic. Now imagine a person with antisocial personality disorder. Is it ego dystonic or ego synctonic? 100% ego synctonic. It's somehow become part and parcel of who they are. Medication sometimes don't cure, therapists don't cure, love, prayers may cure, but are you willing to take the risk with your life? You might be dead. Maybe the person will change, but your life. So therefore we need to really see, is this person's violence, is it because of personality disorder? If it is a personality disorder, the symptoms are what? Ego synctonic. Very, very difficult to bring it to their awareness that their behavior is problematic. So imagine somebody with ego synctonic. An example of that personality disorder is antisocial personality disorder. Sometimes they may come to a center like this and they'll be like, oh, you madam, I will never hit her once again. All promises, because you remember what did I say is the definition of an apology. An apology is equal to promise. That's it. I will not hit her. Angelic behavior sometimes may last for 1 year also. And then what happens? But then that lady might remember, but 1 year he was fine, no? But after 1 year, you see the act of the honeymoon phase ended, and then once again the same cycle. Can we please be careful? Maybe, rough estimation, maybe about 15 to 20 percentage of abusers only have personality disorder. The rest of it is, I'm a man and I deserve to be violent. They very well know. They don't have personality disorder. See, sometimes what happens, no? Abusers may come with thoda, information on personality disorders. And then, so, what to do? I have personality disorder, I'm unable to. A person with genuine personality disorder won't tell that they have a personality disorder because that awareness is not there. This is an act. If it is personality issue, then the violence is getting manifested in all areas of life. With mother, with father, with children, with colleagues, the person may not be a gentle, the person. For all know, it's more pervasive. It's pervasive. So you tell me the number of cases we have seen, violence is not pervasive. With colleagues, they can very well regulate their, anger, aggression. That means it's not personality disorder. Sometimes legal intervention is our safest option where there is personality disorder, especially antisocial personality disorder. The other, we will look into it. See, antisocial personality disorder could be like, it's not just domestic violence, but there might also be other fraudulent behavior. There could be lying, there could be money related theft that has already happened in the past. Yeah, beyond drugs. That's antisocial personality disorder. But there could also be several other forms of personality disorders that could also contribute to domestic violence. Like paranoid personality disorder. Paranoid personality disorder is the person believes that everybody is out there to harm him or her. So there's also personality disorder. Are you all okay? Now all of this could be playing out here. There is dependency personality disorder. They want to abuse, but then they don't want to let go of the lady. They might be the first ones to apologize, give excuse, and their honeymoon period will last long. Are you all listening? There's also a personality disorder called what? Dependency personality disorder. Think about it. Socio-culturally, every other relationship, if the person is getting too dependent, a friend might be like, oh my God, I can't handle you. I can't take 24 hours of your calls. They can separate, no? But then the marriage is seen as a bond of interdependency. And for somebody with personality disorder, this is like a sanction. Now, this is the person that you can completely become dependent. I don't know, I mean, some of you might have attended other sessions. I might have spoken the context of financial, the violence. I'm aware of this, one case, somebody that I know, with her permission, I'm, talking about it. She's a PhD holder, someone who was into teaching, the profession. This man, the husband, he wouldn't tell, I don't want you to go to work. He wouldn't tell that. Because knowing her, she would be like, if he proves himself to be dominant, she's assertive enough to say, no, this is my right. You know what are his tactics? He would beg and plead. He's like, oh my God, when I'm going out of home for work, if I don't see your face, my day is getting ruined. And at what time does he go? 11 o'clock he goes. Which college starts at 12 o'clock? After he's gone, can she go? She actually tried evening college. What do you think his logic would be? When I come back, if I come back to an open, an empty house, I feel like an orphan. Please don't do this to me. And 3 years, she didn't do any work because she wanted to emotionally support this man. His static is, I want to see your face, I want to. And somehow in her mind, this was a sign of love. She would tell, I know of people who won't care, but he wants to really, there is no other problem. Except, I'm unable to fulfill my aspiration. It became evident to her that this is a problematic behavior. She's a single child. The parents are financially dependent on her. And then he wouldn't provide for some medical expenditure despite having the money. And then she's like, where is your love? And then it's like retrospectively understood, this is no love because love is supportive. If anything, this love was prohibitive. But then for her, at least I've not met this, man, but the way she would describe heights of dependent personality disorder. Heights of dependent personality disorder. Sometimes, when she would say, but you go to work, you would take one week, 10 days leave to just be with her. And she would think this. See, he truly wants to be with me. It's not just that I shouldn't go out. If needed, he will also stay back. You see how people get stuck here? I would say mental health gets worsened, by several folds if the cycle of abuse is not understood. Because imagine with each cycle, won't there be a fresh set of trauma and everything else? Now, this is something that I want you to just remember. Um, this is, I learned about this 3E model of understanding trauma when I realized cases such as the one that I just mentioned, the fact that she burned herself, she did not find that traumatic. And for a long time, I was like, how? How is that even possible? But then the idea is look at this. These are the 3E conceptualization of trauma. Trauma, aghata, we say, no? The sense of something is overwhelming. I don't want anybody to think that trauma is shock. At least what can I say? A more holistic way of understanding trauma is any time an incident or an experience overwhelms us, that's beyond our ability to process, that can be considered trauma. Yeah? So these are the 3Es. There is an event. Now, the event is not determining whether it's trauma or not. What determines whether it's trauma? The experience of that event. Have you seen? I've definitely met children who would say, my mummy hits me, I do like this and I go. Look at that. I do like this, nothing, ma'am. You see, on the other hand, there might be a child, a child is traumatized because there was physical abuse. For all you know, see, the earlier example that I gave, I'll just do like this, it's desensitization. Traumatized to such an extent, now it's become a habit. This is who I am. I'll, So, therefore, but what I'm trying to say here is, let's not assume by default that certain events are traumatic. For some, it's not traumatic. Because what you consider to be traumatic, maybe the person has seen even more severe forms of an experience. So, therefore, for them, it's not traumatic. So, E is the event. What we need to look at is the experience of it. See, the number of people, I don't know, you guys help me. There was this one movie, the Tapsi one, Tappad. One of my relatives saw it and she was like, oh my god, idu nodak hodna nanu. I don't know what the movie is. I think she gets slapped and she considers it to be abusive because psychologically, legally, it is. But so many people had that reaction. No, this is abuse, a movie on this. What does that mean for them? For her, the event of slapping was the experience of trauma. Whereas for some other people, the event of slapping was not experience of trauma. So when they had the effects of mental illness, many people go unsupported. Could be counting, only one I have. And then imagine this girl has parents who also believe the same thing, that it was just one slap. What happens is the effect is the mental health consequences, right? When they're experiencing this, that means there is not going to be empathy from people around. So therefore, it's very, very important for us to explain in the community that, look, your experience of trauma, maybe you are not traumatized because of a slap. Let's not say, no, you too are traumatized. No. Possible that a slap did not traumatize you. Whatever be the reason, I might believe it's unfortunate you're desensitized, but then still, fine, you are not traumatized. But there might be someone who is traumatized, and because of that, there shall be mental health consequences, and because of that, we need empathy. Are you all okay with this? EEE model. There is an event, The event won't determine whether the effect will be there or not. It's the experience of that event that will determine whether there's going to be a mental health consequence. And now this effect could be thousands of mental disorders. We need to therefore understand it. Look at this. This is called psychological entrapment theory. And sometimes just, taking a printout of this picture, and I'll now give you one metaphor. Many people sometimes gain certain perspective. You too can give it a try. So let's say, somebody suggested you to watch a Netflix series, or let's go to a theater in this example. Let's say somebody said this is the best movie ever, and you trust this person. You went to the movie and you're watching it 10 minutes, already you got headache. Any such examples of a movie that you watch 10 minutes, severe headache? What's the sane thing to do? Get up and walk. But do we do that? No, we wait till, wait madana. Interval ginta munche, ಏನೋ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೇನೋ, ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಪಿಕಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೇನೋ. Didn't improve. Even till the interview, the movie is getting bad and bad. If we are wise, what should we do now? At least now, because there's a genuine break, you can actually walk out. But do we do that? No, we'll get a popcorn. Now you need to finish that popcorn in the theater only. So we will sit through the whole movie waiting for it to get better, but it didn't get better. Yes or no? Now apply this to survivors of domestic violence. What's this? Yeah, sheer hope that things may get better. And also, see, don't get me wrong, but I've seen this. I don't know what's this phenomena in the brain. Love for, what do you call that, round numbers like 5 and 10 and 15. Some love for it. Meaning, I've seen more number of women sometimes say, Madam, 3 years improve ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೆ, ಬಟ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. 5 ವರ್ಷ ನೋಡ್ಬಿಡೋಣ. ಇದೇನು 5 ವರ್ಷ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ತರ, ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ. 5 years. That love, punch, something about this 5 years, 10 years. Somehow 5, 10, 15, 20 are our milestones. I've seen many. They got married, there's severe abuse, 1 year anniversary. Now looking back, 1 year I have given to this mess. Maybe things will improve, get better. 5 years, by now a child. 10 ವರ್ಷ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೇನೋ. ಅಷ್ಟರಲ್ಲಿ 15 ಆಗೋಯ್ತು, ಅಷ್ಟರಲ್ಲಿ 20 ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. 20 ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಲೈಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡೋಣ. Let's see whether it's almost like, listen to this. Psychological entrapment theory is, in order to justify the lost time, we are willing to throw the entire future. What if? What if? Absolutely. Yeah, but that's a big fear. Absolutely, ma'am. Could be. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think Sudeshna ma'am, right? I think earlier Sudeshna ma'am was also talking about it. No, that bond. It's like known devil better than a known angel. So the known past, repetition, that's fine. But many times when I've given the example of a boring novel, it makes sense. Na ishta illa movie off madad better, but no. It's not like gunpoint is there, right? The director is not saying, if you don't watch, I'll commit suicide, or you don't watch, I'll murder. Yet we want to. So all that I'm saying is, it's not just in the context of domestic violence that we want closure. But in this case, closure can come in the form of sometimes death also. No, we've seen women getting killed because more time was given. It's all interlinked, definitely. But then, so therefore, when we are supporting, there is something called exploration of logical consequence. That's a skill. What's this exploration of logical consequence? Like ma'am said, let's use the word invest. Investment in terms of time, investment of, life, finances, emotions, or giving time. time is the biggest investment. The argument now is 1 year of investment, yes, but how many more years? So, exploration of logical consequences, you're investing this, but what are your gains? What are your returns? Are you sure this is going to be the return? And times like that is when we may have to talk about the other cases where investment have proven disastrous. But the psychological entrapment theory is to give meaning to the past. We are willing to sometimes destroy the future. And sometimes, that explanation with dating violence, I've seen this more often. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, sure.
Us women are born with stories of sacrifice and how we endure
Yeah.
through mythological stories, through social stories, and also how we are idolized and made to feel like goddesses when we put to an investment, like I would like
Yeah.
to borrow this
Yeah.
word, into that. So how does that play with this? Because that has a very
It
much
has.
very strong role when it comes to women moving away, or I would say, I wouldn't call it transgressing, but for having, it's like an achievement. So
So
marriage
true.
is an
So true.
achievement,
Yeah.
bigger achievement if parents have endorsed it, biggest achievement when you have children, another big achievement if you have a male child. So when you have had
I
all
know.
this and now when you are facing violence in
Yeah.
different spheres,
So
how
true.
does one navigate out of it? Is it just me? Is it just a book then?
No,
Then it's
no.
not just a book, then
Yeah.
it's
Ma'am,
much
it's
larger.
much larger.
Much
Like you
larger.
said, social conditioning is exactly what is strengthening the psychological entrapment, no?
Correct.
So social conditioning is exactly what's strengthening, the psychological entrapment. At least I'm just giving one example, ma'am. At Mukta Foundation, we have this project called Stories of Liberation. Stories of liberation. In fact, Donna also was telling that there's going to be a program where we are going to talk about how survivors have become thrivers after taking certain. Now, we need to sometimes saturate the community with these stories of liberation so that social conditioning we are able to undo it. So I think so sometimes we've had sessions wherein we've only told stories of liberation. Sometimes, our counseling sessions have also been, let's say, Satya is our client. Satya in that session will not talk to me. Instead, we'll have 5 people call her, or if they are willing, and they will tell their stories to her. So indirectly for all, she might choose not to get psychologically entrapped anymore. But now, if you ask me, can we undo 35 years of social conditioning in 3 sessions? Maybe it's difficult, but it does open up a possibility. We are only looking at possibilities. I mean, imagine I'm of a certain age. If I'm 40 years of social conditioning, and brain is like a sponge. It has just imbibed everything that it has heard. And these have all been stories of women. So even that word endured, it's so, sometimes it creates anger, put up with, nonsense of violence, and then they have been glorified. So therefore, we need to undo these stories, and the only way I feel practical way is to collect more stories of liberation. Collect more stories of liberation, make it more accessible, not in a preachy way. That ನೋಡು ಅವ್ರದ್ದಾಯ್ತು ನೀನು ಹಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾ, that maybe was able to do it in a month, I might take 10 years, but as long as I'm open to the possibility, at least I'm not trapped anymore. I would strongly recommend collect stories of liberation. We've called that project Mukta Katha. Mukta Katha is stories of liberation, collecting stories. We have some 200, 250 stories as of now. We pick and choose what is, and we've also connected to these women so that they talk directly. Somebody might say, 5 years I was there. And we've seen sometimes in counseling, Namdu 5 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ 6th year ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ಗಾಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಹೌದಾ? Counselors work really is redundant. That's a lived experience of liberation, and ours is secondary data, right? So therefore I think one of the ways that we could handle psychological entrapment